Hello everybody. Madhavi, Reddy, Priya, Gohad and I, Neha Ghatpande, are presenting the paper titled Heritage in Making: Negotiating Conventional Idea of Heritage by Young People in India. Young people's cultural literacy, perceptions of cultural heritage, identity, and choice of participating in cultural practices depends on numerous determinants. Based on individual preferences, young people in India seek very different experiences, from forms of artistic expression to everyday life practices. In theorizing globalization, three interpretations by Viktor Rudmetov, the author has challenged the binary conception of global and local. He states that globalization is globalization refracted through the local. This explanation allows its analytical autonomy from globalization. The local is not annihilated or absorbed or destroyed by globalization, but rather operates symbiotically with globalization and shapes the telos or end state or result. Using this theoretical context, we have tried to analyze how young people, through their voluntary cultural engagements, are becoming active parts of heritage in making discourse by either protecting an old tradition or reinventing heritage spaces that are not part of the mainstream in the globalized urban world. One of the examples is that the group of wall painters considered here as a site of research was inspired by how shop shutters were painted in Spain, and they tried to replicate the same idea in the Pune city, but with completely localized perspective and art forms. This transformation of idea from global to local and then putting it out there again at the global level through technology constitute an interesting discourse of globalization in India and in the youth culture. While looking at the qualitative data from the perspective of globalization, we have arrived at a discussion where intersections of gender, religion, and cultural politics further refract the local discourse from the global. Though diversity and gender equality are part of much discussed global discourse, in the space of youth in India, these intersections are complex and contested at several instances. Through this presentation, we have attempted to explore the same from the perspectives of state intervention, gender socialization, and the intersection of religion, culture, and politics while shaping the identities of the young people and their perceptions of heritage in making. State intervention. Indian cultural heritage represents both tangible, that is, architectural and material cultural elements, and intangible capital, especially culture, and contributes to its tourism and general economic development. Therefore, the intervention of state becomes inevitable to define and regulate heritage sites and tend to influence how culture and heritage are understood in the public domain. The Maharashtra state government had announced its own cultural policy in 2010. The policy suggests conservation and development of the state's culture in terms of the language, literature, Indology, and institutional support for various cultural activities. But the state's approach seems to be not only less participatory but also mechanical in a way. It neglects the social reality. The state's emphasis is to protect what exists rather than producing or and promoting the new work created by the young generation. State institutions in India, however, do not have a set pattern of relating to heritage sites and their administration. The relatively limited idea of heritage causes a disconnect between young people and what is understood as heritage. Young people's narratives on heritage are broader in scope than those of the state. Various everyday issues are part of their vision, whereas the state's conception of heritage is limited to conserving the relics of the past. The absence of a strong state policy leads to alternative space for young people to explore and create their own heritage. Methodology. For the purpose of this study, two case studies were selected. Case study one is a group of performers using Indian drums, locally known as Dhol, Tasha, Pathak. A group of young people involved in wall painting activity are the part of case study two. Participant observations were carried out by attending the activities of case study 1 over a period of 4 months and for case study 2 for 1 month. 14 in-depth interviews were conducted across both the case studies. Data analysis with the help of thick ethnographic diaries and theoretical framework was also considered. To know more about the sites, case study 1, which is known as Dhol Tasha Pathak, they perform the traditional musical performance using the Indian drums. It is mainly performed during the popular Lord Ganesha festival. It has a history of 4 decades with specific formations and rhythmic structure. In the city of Pune, locals, especially young people, come together to form Dhol Tasha Pathaks. The group includes both men and women. Pune supposedly has the largest number of Dhol Tasha Pathaks in India. The Dhol Tasha holds a global presence, while Pune still remains the most popular. It is a growing trend in Pune, which is attracting not only the young locals but also many young people from outside India. The energetic atmosphere, love for music, tradition, pure worship towards Lord Ganesh, and a passion for preserving the culture can be experienced during the performance of the group. Case study 2 is a group of young people involved in wall painting or street art. This is a group of young artists who make over the shutters of old stores in one of the lanes located in an old part of the city. They paint the shutter with images that are inspired by the nature of the shops. They speak to the owner and understand their needs, then work on the suitable design and finally get to work on Sundays. Many young people aged between 20 to 30 years voluntarily take part in this activity. Phase 2 involves painting the walls of specific area in the city. Their mission is to revive the grandeur of the Pates, known as early settlements in the city, and make the place a lot more appealing to the tourists that visit. Cultural heritage and gendered socialization. Cultural engagement seems to be prominently determined by gender. Gendered socialization in terms of cultural activities leads to the withdrawal of majority of young girls from cultural participation in public places. The gendered division and restricted socio-cultural participation of girls in public spaces in India is documented in many other studies. Even in urban public spaces, women do not enjoy equal access as compared to men. Denial of access needs to be handled by either suggesting public safety or rather claiming the right to take risks to maximize their access to public space. While accessing public spaces, lack of public safety becomes a major obstacle for the girls. This is prominently expressed by the participants from a wall painting group as they talk about their experiences while carrying out their wall painting activity. The Dhol Tasha group was prominently male dominated, but lately many young girls participate in the group activity. While the female members from Dhol Tasha group explain that there is no gender discrimination in the group, but their responses indicate the deeply entrenched nature of gender based inequalities. They express that the attitude of the entire group towards female participation enhances their cultural engagement. Social location also plays an important role in the gendered nature of cultural participation, especially in public spaces. Although the wall painting activity is led by girls, but the shop owners or even visitors to the place tend to converse with the male members in the group to inquire about the project. Aniket, one of the male team members, also talks about his awkwardness during the interview. One of the female participants from Dhol Tasha Pathak, Dia, says that although there is no gender discrimination as such, but at certain processions, only boys are sent and girls are not allowed for safety consideration. Which area the procession is going to be in, how safe it is. So, mostly they never send girls, or even if they do, they keep the pathak wound tight around the girls. She says that this can't be called discrimination. They do it for our safety. If anything were to go wrong, the group would be held responsible. So it is not discrimination. They just don't send girls to certain processions, says Dia. The responses indicate the nature of female participation in both the groups, wherein the young girls from the Dhol Tasha group are more submissive, while in the wall painting group it is dominant in nature. As Shahida mentions remarks like see that two bold girls they come across while carrying out their activities, but at the same time they also mention about the gendered restrictions that are expected while working in specific public places such as dressing behavior, etc. Gendered nature of cultural socialization exhibits distinguishable patterns of cultural participation. In the process of making and remaking of heritage, gendered pattern of cultural expression becomes an important indicator of cultural socialization. Policy intervention by government agencies and civil society organizations focused on resolving the gender division in cultural sphere can enhance equal participation in claiming and reclaiming cultural heritage. Religious, cultural, and political identities of young people. In the heritage and making discourse, it is important to recognize the religion and politics as the shaping factors of identities of the young. From the available data, it is quite clear that the young people have established the relationship between religion and culture. They define culture in their own ways, but mostly associate the concept with tradition, inheritance, and festivals that are rooted in their religion. The makeup of the Dhol Tasha group is not religiously diverse, yet the caste diversity is quite visible. It is also visible that most of the participants have friends who are from other castes, religion, and class. The makeup of the wall art group is more diverse through caste and religion but homogeneous when it comes to economic class. But majority of the participants are Hindu and hence it remains the most assumed factor of the discussion, especially in the Dhol Tasha performance group. The participants are more vocal about considering Hindu culture as the national culture. They also believe that they are preserving a vital part of their culture by performing during the procession of our Ganesh festival. Hence, while constructing the idea of heritage in their minds, its association with Hindu culture is assumed and is perceived by them as inevitable. That does not mean they don't express regard and respect for other religious and caste cultures. Yet it could be observed that homogeneity in the religious and national culture is desired by them. The idea that culture is neutral or apolitical makes no sense as culture relates itself to social groups and their self expression. Hence, it is essential to establish that the perception of culture and religion of the young people cannot be looked at as independent of the politics surrounding those factors. For example, most of the participants express that culture should not be associated with politics. Yet they express their opposition to the policy that provides reservation of seats to minorities in educational institutions and government jobs because of its political misuse. As most of the participants come from upper and middle caste, their opposition to the reservation policy is not only political but also cultural. Religion, culture, and politics in Indian context intersect with each other in everyday life and must be taken as one of the most influential factors while understanding the discourse of young people and heritage in making. As the choice of an identity and the political use of an identity must be looked at in the context of what they consider as heritage, what they consider as worth preserving, and how they do or do not perceive intersections of heritage with religion and politics surrounding it. These findings lead to a trend that young people experience or practice the religious and caste divisions or discriminations in more complex ways. An attempt to imply the binary lens of conservative and liberal would limit the understanding of their expressions and identities. It is important to look beyond the popular binary narrative and understand them through the multicultural model and layered identities rather than fixed or singular. The fundamental difference between the two groups is that the Dhol Tasha group is trying to preserve an old tradition of one culture, while the street artists or wall painters are trying to reinvent an old lane as heritage, something that is never considered as one. This difference between the groups give rise to several contestations when it comes to religion, culture, and politics, and influences the idea of what is worth to be called as heritage and what is not. Coming to the conclusion, in the context of globalization, at one point we have state intervention in the idea of heritage, where the relics of the past are celebrated. This intervention is not only exclusionary of the young people's creations but also of their perceptions about what they consider as heritage. The state intervention is also governed by the various heritage recognitions provided by UNESCO and other such global agencies, while at the local level, practices of cultural heritage, especially that of young people, do not find recognition or inclusion in the overall discourse. From the data collected for this study, A generalization could be made that the cultural groups of young people in India do not necessarily operate with confines of religious, caste, and gender discriminations, yet all of these could be seen as present in various complex ways. Indian youth, especially in the urban spaces, experiences multiculturalism, layers of identities, and the exposure to the global ideas through technology. These factors are shaping their conceptions of the nation state, of their culture, social location, and even their perceptions about what they consider as heritage. Further investigation in what young people want to call their heritage and including their ideas and aspirations as part of the broader heritage policy at the global and local level must be advocated. Thank you.